set up every day. Wow. Okay. Hi. I'm Prison Cat. Some of my friends know me as Steph, and I'm going to keep reading from my fantasy novel Black Wolf, which you can find the text for by going to prismcat.com/blackwolf, all one word. Multiple formats, all absolutely free. The most up-to-date version is the one on Wattpad. I really need to update the others. I may have a feline co-host today. I don't know if he's just gonna go to sleep or if he's actually going to participate. And there's another one who's been ultra super snuggly well, I shouldn't say all day, the last little bit. So she may drop by too. We'll see. Other than that, just me. And if you're out there lurking, that's awesome. I'm happy to have you. So let's, how about if I stop rambling and I actually read. Got everything set up except the actual document file. Figures, right? Come back here. There we go. There's the spot we want. And we will get that out of the way. And there we go. Okay. So we're starting in chapter 12. We are, of course, back in the mid-90s. And Jessie has been having an interesting time trying to cope with life and Haven, which is a weird place, but Lord, I wish I could find it for real. Hey, sweetheart. Rebecca trotted on 4 feet along the snowy road, enjoying the clean scent of the wind, the winter's peace. This was how a wolf was meant to live all the time, not fenced in on all sides by buildings and roads, people who took for granted you'd risk your own life to protect them. Too many other wolves, all compressed into one too small territory, like animals in a zoo. A tantalizing scent caught her attention, and she paused to investigate. Hare, and the trail was fresh. She considered going after it, as a fresh kill would be the crowning pleasure, but decided against a hunt just now. There'd always be another, and she did want to see the art displayed in the village. Despite, or perhaps because of, their weakness, humans and elves and dryads could be fascinatingly creative. And it went without saying that, of course, any wolf who chose to make an effort could turn wild spirit into physical form, although the others would never truly comprehend what they saw. Yes, sweetheart, it's a fidget spinner. You've seen them before. I'm just keeping my hands busy while I'm reading. Like her own coven, she turned her thoughts from them in disgust. Why ruin a pleasant day? Maybe this art show would take her mind off it. Haven was fairly quiet for a Sunday. Today was the first day of the show, and the only day she'd have free until the next weekend. 9-to-5 jobs were such a nuisance, but someone had to do them, and better her at the bank than many she could think of. At least it was better than the college, which she had abandoned as pointless frustration, soon after Deanna and Bane had stolen Kevin from her. The library was the first she reached of the places housing the art show. Just outside the door, she changed back to human, twitching her bright mage silk skirt into place, and went inside. The hall just within was lined with paintings, some of them fairly pleasing to the eye. One in particular she liked was of a moon rising full behind winter bare trees. She wandered along the hall, contentedly evaluating each painting. Hello! How's it going? My feet? It would be really difficult for me to get my feet up into range of the camera right now. It's a bit of a makeshift setup and a little bit cramped. Sorry. One in particular she liked was of a moon rising full behind winter bare trees. She wandered along the hall, contentedly evaluating each painting, and deciding that mostly they were tolerable but not outstanding. Not until she reached the end of the hall did she recognize the two other voices that were speaking counterpoint with Brian's, Kevin and Gisela. Brian was shelving books, while Kevin straddled a chair backwards, and Gisela perched on a second. The library must be otherwise empty, otherwise they wouldn't be talking full volume. Discussing the art show, in fact, and a few ink drawings Sonia was offering for sale that were at White Stag. Rebecca hesitated a moment. She hadn't planned on confronting anyone today, even Kevin. Yet if she left, she'd never get to see what was inside. Head high, she stepped into the library. All three glanced towards her. Brian greeted her with a neutral nod, Gisela with a wary expression, and Kevin with, "Hey, Becky, checking out the art?" "Yes, I assume it doesn't stop in the hall." Brian indicated the far end of the room, down where there were chairs and a couch for those who felt like staying here to read. "There's another half-dozen or so there." She inclined her head in acknowledgement and wove her way between the shelves. Behind her, she heard Gisela whisper, "How can you be so friendly to her?" But no reply followed. Almost silent footsteps, Kevin's familiar scent. "That one's neat," he commented. "All the fairies hiding in the forest, and you can't see them unless you really look. Maybe one time the forest really was alive like that." "Maybe," she agreed. "Jesse's back in Haven. He has been for a week or so." "I know. But you've been leaving him alone. Thank you." That was too unexpected. She had no reply ready. "Why should I care about him?" she asked disdainfully. "I don't know. Do you care if he's ever whole and healed?" "No wolf is whole in this century," she hissed. "I hope he never heals. I hope he can never shape change. Then he'll never have to know half freedom." "Freedom's in your mind. Putting chains on other people because you feel like there are chains on you is crazy." "I don't recall asking what you think." "True, you didn't." He sighed. "I just wanted to thank you for staying away from Jess. Enjoy the art." He turned away and went back to his friends. It wasn't fair. Kevin was meant to be hers, to protect from all the bad things drawn to mages, and to watch over, and to love her. And he'd been stolen away from her. By Deanna first. His present coven kept him away. Now that little thief and that damned healer, they had what should be hers. And he went along with it, instead of choosing to stand by her. Anger welled up, hot and strong again. She leashed it firmly, concentrated on what she was here for. The last painting was of a man on his knees, eyes closed, in the middle of a field being reaped by women with sickles. Given the sun and moon overhead, the garlands that were all he wore, she judged it to be the green god, dying with the harvest. Attractive, but imagery for farmers, not hunters. Without acknowledging the presence of anyone but herself and Brian, she left the library, and tried to decide where next, while shifting back to fur. The brewery and Venus Alive were both fairly close, and after them she could do the others. Much later, she loped home. She shifted to human on the back porch, and went through the warm kitchen to the living room. Carl was watching TV. He looked away to greet her, and his nostrils flared, catching some scent. "What have you been doing with Kevin?" he growled. "Is that any of your business?" She was growing more than a little weary of his possessive attitude of late. "Yes, I thought we decided that August was the last revenge we'd think about." He rose and came to face her. He was only a little less than a head shorter than her, more solidly built. He had taken to wearing unrelieved black, which, given his sandy blonde coloring, made him look like the Walking Dead. Bad enough that you waste calling demons on telling you things about that new pet of his, but now you're off socializing with him? After he betrayed us? Stay out of what you don't understand, and don't you ever question me or anything I do. Is that clear? He challenged her, holding her gaze for longer than she expected, but in the end, he looked down and said sullenly, "Yes." Remember it. Go on back to your TV and your video games. Some of us have real lives to live. As long as that life doesn't include Kevin Leorin, Carl growled, but he kept his eyes down. It includes whomever I wish it to include. She swept by him, toward the stairs, up to her own room where she could close the door, sprawl on the bed, and let the bittersweet memories flood over her. She'd come here to go to the college, of course. It was a given for the highly gifted, who needed to be part of a coven with a wolf to keep them safe from predators, and for elves and dryads, who could only interbreed with humans for so many generations before their children became gifted humans instead, and for the wolves, who were responsible for that safety. For anyone else, it was optional, but who would really want to go to school surrounded by humans who thought they were all there was, and that magic was superstition, unless it were absolutely unavoidable? Her third day of classes, walking back to her Aunt Sylvia's house, she had seriously wondered whether it could possibly be worth it. People everywhere, wolves everywhere. She'd been miserably tense for the past 3 days, watching every direction at once, though encounters with other wolves had been carefully neutral and highly ritualized on all sides. High emotions everywhere, making the air thick with scents and driving voices up to levels that made her wince. Anxiety and optimism, excitement and homesickness. Perhaps the most disheartening was that, as far as she could tell, everyone around her was perfectly happy to swallow everything they were told without question. Willing sheep, even the wolves who tamely accepted leashes and muzzles. Probably she should never have expected that to be any different here than it was in Endor, though. After all, much of Endor had been through the college as well, and had been instilled with the same dogma. Presumably it was conducive to the harmony and mutual support of the mixed villages in a hostile world, but it strangled. Couldn't anyone else feel that? She had just skipped her final class, in fact, unable to bear it, and hoping to walk home without being part of a crowd. Near a corner, she had paused, overhearing voices. "Not a great way to start off the school year," a very young female voice said in exasperation. "Getting everyone mad at you, and making one intramural team look bad?" "Oh, come on," laughed a male voice, also young. "I was doing it so obviously that no one could possibly claim that Red Team won on skill. And you have to admit, my way it was a lot less boring to watch." "A bit trickier to play, however," said a different male voice, dryly. "More of a challenge, but it was already too much of a challenge for half my teammates to begin with." "Which is why I did it. There was no way you guys were going to win, and it was boring watching Blue keep scoring over and over and over. What's the point of being a mage if I'm not allowed to use it to keep my brain from oozing out my ears and running away in self-defense? Come on, Dia, I heard you giggling when Alan slipped and I made the little birds around his head. He wasn't hurt. He's a wolf. Paying attention to a couple of bruises would mean losing face anyway, and I distracted him." Curious, Rebecca resumed walking, and within a few more steps could see them. The trio was coming from the direction of the high school, and she could see the strap of a backpack on the shoulder of each. One male, who was grinning, was an elf, tall and bright golden blonde and white-skinned, all in colorful mage silks. He was playing with a handful of sunlight, turning it into a bird, then a flower, then a long ribbon that danced around the three of them before coming back to his hand. The other male was somewhat shorter, a duller sandy blonde and tanned, his build more solid, and also in mage silks, but they were muted brown shades. Probably a wolf. The one female was very likely a dryad, curvy and dark, in an oak green mage silk dress that fit and flattered her perfectly, and a matching ribbon braided into her long auburn hair. All right, it was funny, the dryad conceded. But it wasn't at all funny for everyone in range trying to grab control of the ball back, and he wouldn't have fallen at all if you hadn't added an illusory ball too. Then they shouldn't be trying to fight me directly, now should they? The elf said. Right, like one half-trained mage who's nowhere near as strong, and a handful of telekinetics are going to be able to go against me? Now, that was an interesting statement, delivered in a completely matter-of-fact tone, colored now not by amusement, but by creeping frustration. To be fair, the wolf said, it was better than being bored for another half hour and being thoroughly beaten. If a few people got annoyed, well, it's not going to kill them. They should be used to the idea of Kev being ridiculously strong by now, and know better than to try brute force. I'm not sure asking nicely would have made him listen, but it would have had a better chance of success than trying to overpower him. I mean, how stupid is that? Thank you, the elf said. At least someone has some appreciation. Excuse me, Rebecca said, offering them her best smile. I gather there's a restaurant around here with no sign, just in case of tourists wandering through. I can't seem to find it. All three paused. You're about 4 blocks from it, the dryad said, gesturing in what Rebecca assumed was the correct direction. She hadn't paid much attention. We can show you where, the elf said. We're, out a bit early, and we've got time. I'm Kevin. That's Deanna. That's Carl. You've just started at the college? Yes, I'm Rebecca. And thanks. Maybe when we get there I can buy you a snack and you can tell me about Haven. Snack. The magic word to an elven mage, Carl said. Nostrils flared as he took in her scent. Well, she was investigating his, too, though both played the civilized game on the surface. Wolf dynamics showed in the details of body language, though. This was his territory, and she was new, but she was older and had the confidence of an alpha, and he chose to drop his gaze and turn very slightly away in respect. Heading out, baby girl? This way, milady. After you. Comfortably seated in the brewery, each with a drink and with a generously large shared appetizer platter to nibble on, they talked. About Haven, about Endor, about how being in French-speaking Quebec made Endor different from Haven, despite the pragmatic emphasis on bilingualism. About the trio, who already considered themselves a coven and were unsure whether to bother with the college. An elven mage needs a wolf around, Carl said, especially a really strong one, obviously, but Kev's already got me. And where Kev goes, Dia goes. That's just a given. Why look for more than that? Sounds practical, Rebecca agreed. What about the actual educational side of it? I'm probably going to take some of the horticulture and herbalism classes, Deanna said. I'm good at kitchen witch stuff, so probably I'll watch for a job that uses that. I've got another year after Kev and Carl are done to make up my mind. Carl can't sit still through high school classes. I don't think college classes are likely to be any better. And Kev would have to actually take something seriously long enough to make up his mind, which is probably not going to happen before he graduates. The affectionate tone took all the sting out of the words, and Kevin just grinned at her. I can be serious, Kevin said. I just find it hard to take the same thing seriously that everyone else does. I don't know what I want to do. I mean, it's kind of a given that I'm eventually going to be considered adept. I'm really strong and really good. But everyone expects adepts to be all responsible and, pillars of the community with sensible jobs. One runs this place, and the other is our local psychotherapist who also teaches humanities classes at the college. And that's around the expectation of teaching magic, too. That doesn't sound particularly appealing. What's the point of being a mage if I'm not supposed to use it to have fun and show off a bit, and I have to devote my whole life to everybody else? That is not what anyone is saying, Deanna sighed. Rebecca figured that was in fact exactly what they were saying, or at least what lay underneath everything that they were saying. A couple of years wasn't so big a difference, really. Not when in front of her was a kindred spirit, one who was no more comfortable fitting into the role ordained by their culture than she was, one who wanted to be free. She could show him how, or at least as far as she had managed to get, and maybe together they could find the rest of the path. The other two might be inconvenient, but which one ultimately was Kevin going to listen to? An earthbound dryad who was the voice of convention, wanting him to act in ways that clearly chafed, or a wolf who was trying to show him how to escape the cage and fly? Deanna could safely be ignored until Kevin outgrew her. Carl's views were clearly more flexible, and it was possible he could be swayed. Breaking down the other connections that confined him shouldn't be all that hard. Though Kevin laughed it off, she suspected that many people were uneasy with a strong mage gift in the hands of someone they could only see as impulsive and unreliable. That would be predictable and normal, and he didn't need them or their approval as much as he currently believed he did. Maybe coming to Haven hadn't been such a mistake after all, she had thought. Until Deanna had forced him to choose, and Kevin had chosen Deanna over Rebecca, a cage over freedom. Her current coven, and to the best of her knowledge, Haven in general, all believed that it was some sort of relentless and irrational desire for revenge that drove her. That was only further proof of how little they understood her. Dwayne's dream about the stranger sleeping by the side of the road had seemed like a godsend. Driving to the general area, she had investigated fur form and confirmed the noxious smells of the city and a fainter scent of wolf. With more time to think, she would probably have been less willing to risk Jesse's life, but how could she pass up such an opportunity? Some gifted could get away with staying solitary and trusting to the density of wolves in Haven protecting them from predators. Not elven mages, and least of all strong ones. Without Bane, Kevin would have no choice but to find another wolf. There were few solitary wolves, and none of them were at all likely candidates. No existing coven would accept him. Haven had had too clear a glimpse of what Kevin truly was, and their little sheep souls remained terrified of it. Possibly Brian would try, for the sake of Laurie's fondness for her cousin, though 2 elven mages in one coven was asking for trouble. Possibly Eveline might, even though adding Kevin to a coven already in precarious balance because of Nick's moods and Sonia's odd gifts would be an equally bad idea. Without Deanna, it was all the more certain that he would turn back to Rebecca. Then they could go away, just the 2 of them, and leave Whitethorn to Carl, and the remainder of Sundark could do whatever they liked. She could get back to work on undoing the damage caused by Kevin's struggle to convince everyone, including himself, that he was a tame little caged songbird instead of a wild raptor that could shatter those bars just by spreading his wings fully. The whole plan had failed, had increased the friction within her current coven, had led to her losing face with the Haven wolves, and to a warning from several alphas that she was once again just a tickle that she was once again venturing into behavior they wouldn't tolerate. Had even led to a lingering trace of guilt that she had been so willing to sacrifice Jesse, or condemn him to a miserable life of fences and walls, though she remained unconvinced that the world would particularly suffer for it. Probably it had ultimately reduced any chance of future success, adding an extra barrier between them. Maybe she should try to be content with what she had. An elven mage who depended heavily on feeling useful to and accepted by her coven. At least it was only her coven, and not Haven in general, but she had proven resistant to Rebecca's attempts to break her of it. A witch, lifelong friend of the mage, who was obsessed with books and pushing magical boundaries. An elf seer, deeply fascinated by old and often forbidden knowledge. At least those two made a good pair, and Moira and Dwayne got along well, since he had the tact to thank her often. A wolf who increasingly believed that he was not beta to her alpha, but was her equal, and entitled to opinions about what she did. All of them often reluctant to grant her the respect and obedience she needed in order to best protect them, without constant, wearying reminders. Well, it could be worse. But given the choice, she'd walk away from them without hesitation, if she could just have Kevin back. That is the end of chapter 12. I wonder if I can show you this little sleepy fuzzball beside me here. Half a sec. Get that out of the way. Sorry if anyone gets dizzy. It's just a laptop in a slightly makeshift setup here. So let's see if I can get this to work. Well, let's try actually being able to see what I'm doing. There we go. There. Got a fuzzy little co-host over there. Sound asleep. Underneath a 60-watt light bulb. Every so often he wakes up and he stretches and he wants me to reach over and pet him. Hey, sweetheart. Yeah, hi. Oh, Lord. And he just twisted and showed his belly, so I'm going to try that again. Let's see. If I do this and this, so that he's actually visible, and then... Oh, now you're not going to do it. Silly boy. Alright, maybe I can catch him stretching and showing off his belly and stuff again in a minute. And I think we're going to tip that up there a little bit farther so it's actually showing my face. Okay, where was I? Okay. Back to the story. Or perhaps a quick sip of tea to make that tickle go away, then back to the story. Alrighty. March 1994, Quicksilver Sphinx. Miscellanea. Nick Winter. Spring is coming. Don't lose hope. Even when it feels like the wheel of the year got stuck in the snow, it keeps turning, and spring approaches. We're less than a month from the equinox. Well, let's see what's happening. There's not a lot planned towards the end of the month, other than equinox stuff listed on the back page. There will be a healers' convention in mid-April, and a witches' convention is being tentatively planned for early May. Candace Honeybee gave birth a week and a half ago to a healthy son. Reports are that he has very blue eyes. Very blue eyes and bright blonde fuzz already. So his biological father is presumably Davin Honeybee. His name is Martin Gabriel. Congratulations, Honeybee. Article of the month. I recommend two, actually. I couldn't decide. One is by Samantha, about familiars. Which types are best for what, the nature of the bond, how to strengthen it, things of that sort. Excellent information for anyone who has a familiar or is thinking of getting one. The other is by Nils Moreau, his speculation on the role elves, dryads, wolves, and human gifted played in creating the very mythologies we now use as a source of symbols. There are places where no evidence is available, but it's certainly enough to make one stop and think. There's a dance at the community hall on the 25th, the Friday before the full moon Sunday. It's open to all. There will be the usual potluck table, so our elves can stay their usual energetic selves, and I'm not sure who's DJing. It's 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., sliding scale $3 to $10. Coven Natesa are looking for short stories, poetry, black and white art, cartoons, or anything else that can be printed. They're putting together a book of Haven's creative talents, and we do have a lot. Submissions are not guaranteed to be in it, but chances are good. They'll be printed, spiral bound, and sold in a few local places. The White Stag folks tell me they have a whole collection of new Haven deck, tarot, medicine, and similar cards. Several are brand new sets by artists in Canadian or other mixed villages. I don't even do cards, but there's a water-slanted witch set that's calling to me. Coven Starlock's house has found an owner. Coven Sundark. One of Haven's first houses has been abandoned for a decade or more, since even with all the well-off families in Haven, no one's wanted the amount of work involved in, not to mention the cost of, fixing it up into habitable condition. Yes, Cynthia Sundark promised to let me at the attics. I can hardly wait. But I swear to behave myself. Besides, Brittany won't let me get out of line. Historical notes. 16 years ago, March was the height of the ghost craze. Someone found out about a nasty accidental death, which I'm not going to describe, and wondered if the ghost of the woman in question might still be around. For a while, everyone was seeing ghosts everywhere. The problem is, with the levels of psychic activity in Haven, the ghosts could be any of four things. Overactive imagination, real ghosts still walking, real ghosts or something else pulled back by all the excitement, or something created by all that energy focused, sometimes hysterically, on one thing. Eventually, all the ghosts that could be found were laid to rest by a group that formed for that purpose, consisting of Haven's more mature and stable mages, witches, mind-gifted, a couple of wolves, a healer, and the 3 adepts here at the time. Enjoy March! See you in April! Man, I wish I could relax that completely. Hey, sweetheart. Chapter 13. Katrin, as a chestnut wolf, bounced into the yard of Coven Sundark's house, paused to look back and check that Gisela was still coming, then frisked off. Gisela watched her greet Eveline respectfully, crouching slightly and turning away, ears back and tail down. Pale-furred Eveline rubbed her cheek against Katrin's affectionately, and both bitches bounded away in a mad game of tag. Well, so much for her companion. Gisela circled the house to the backyard, towards the general noise and merriment. Most of her friends were here already, perched on the back porch and the picnic table. Bane and Brian were poised on either side of a stick, daring each other to try to pick it up, growling in what an outsider might have thought was fierce threat. Eveline, with Katrin almost close enough to bite her tail, ran by and feigned cowering behind Bane. Katrin greeted Bane the same way she had Eveline earlier, before getting back to the puzzle of reaching the alpha bitch. "Hey, Zella," Liam greeted her. How's it going? Liam was the only other healer in this circle of friends, the only healer she felt especially close to other than her mother. Absently, he tucked an escaping lock of dark hair back under the bright woven band Gisela had rarely seen him without. He said it kept his hair out of his eyes. She thought it was just to be different. Pretty good, she answered. I wish Jess were here. I bet he'd have fun. Liam shrugged. It's up to him. Oh, I know. How are you doing with your mother's horse? She leaned against the porch railing, watched all 4 wolves now chasing each other around the yard. Eveline was smallest, dwarfed by the 2 males, but she was also lightning fast and agile. No one could catch her, but she excelled at getting close enough to the others to nip at them and race away again. She was alpha bitch for a reason, and it wasn't only her quick mind and ability to take control of a situation. She'll be okay. The cut's healing nicely, and meanwhile, she's getting spoiled hopelessly. Listen up, Liam's coven mate Nick shouted. Everyone quieted and gathered around the picnic table. The wolves all shifted to human, quite sensibly all in the mage silks that changed with a wolf instead of needing to be removed, each in appropriate colors. Okay, now, we're starting before sunset because there's stuff hidden all over the place, and there are some people who are at a disadvantage in the dark. While Nick spoke, Flynn and Laurie brought a considerable collection of baskets and large bowls to the table, spreading them all over the top. Certain people who are prone to getting overly competitive in games are forewarned not to. He gave the 4 wolves a stern look. Eveline made a face at him. No one's allowed outside the yard or in bedrooms, but anywhere else there are things hidden. Keep it fair, no magic. The only exception is that since Kev and Laurie have no night sight to speak of, if we're out here long enough that you start having trouble, you 2 are allowed to use just enough magic that you can see. But play fair, okay? Any questions? Can we start? Brian asked. Other than that. Silence. Then grab a bowl and go, Flynn declared. Instant motion, everyone reaching for the nearest bowl and scattering in different directions. It must have taken ages for Flynn and Nick and Laurie to hide all the treats that were found. Eggs painted glorious colors, pine cones decorated in endless ways, candies of a dozen sorts. In the crotch of a tree she found a small object wrapped in bright cloth and tied with a ribbon. She had seen a few others find such things, but they seemed to be rare. Laurie finally called everyone back. From what Gisela had picked up, they had divided the grounds in thirds, and each hid the treats in one, leaving them free to help hunt the other 2/3. Everybody should have a present, Laurie said, once everyone was back at the picnic table. If someone has 2, be nice and give one to someone who didn't find one. We hid exactly enough. There was brief confusion while that got settled. Everyone got one? Flynn said. Open them. Gisela set her basket on the ground, untied the bow, and unwrapped it. Within was a delicate glass flower, the petals tinted amethyst purple, and the leaves rich jewel green, the whole thing of a size to fit comfortably cupped on her palm. Okay, gang, Flynn said briskly. That's enough messing around outside. There's water hot for tea, etc. Getting warm won't hurt any of us. The kitchen became a flurry of activity. As usual, the chaos resolved itself into some version of order. Everyone settled with hot drinks in the living room. More bare than usual, since Cynthia and her housemates were packing up to move April 1st. Everybody warm now? Nick asked. And feeling pretty good? General agreement. Good, Laurie said. Then get comfortable and let's look for answers, shall we? She placed a globe the size of a basketball, shimmery iridescent glass that was probably hollow, in the middle of the floor. for those who prefer to have something solid for scrying. Get comfortable, and let's go. They tended to use more ritual at holidays than they did for every day. The circle was properly cast by whoever felt inspired to call each quarter. Gisela relaxed into the easy rhythm of Nick's voice, leading them all into a light trance. Not that she expected any particular visions. She'd never had one. Her gaze dropped to the glass flower cupped in her hand, and stayed there, focused on the purple and green. Laurie's voice joined Nick's, softly, weaving a counterpoint to his. Then Flynn's twined into theirs. The voices braided into each other, until it seemed like all one voice, only she couldn't understand the words. They were a different language. She found in some surprise that she was on a hillside beside a lake, the brilliant moonlight making silvery ripples on the dark water. One path curved down to the water, another led down the opposite face of the hill to a meadow where wolves played, chasing each other around in the wildflowers. A third path led to one side, up a higher hill. She wavered and decided to go upwards. The top of the hill was flat and grassy. From here she could see far down into the wolves' meadow. To her surprise, Jessie was here, as always in black, kneeling beside a black wolf that sat unnaturally still. Crying? She dropped to one knee beside him. Jess? It turned into stone, he said tearfully, because I wouldn't come down the hill. Now it's dead because of me, when it should be free. She laid a hand on the petrified wolf, concentrating hard, praying. Deep within she felt warmth, the faint rumble of a heart beating. It isn't dead, Jess. Not yet. You still have time. He raised his eyes, tears making their darkness shimmer, to hers. But I don't know what to do. I never know how to fix things, just to mess them up. Try asking if it wants to go down with the other wolves. Tell it you'll come, since it seems to want you to. I don't belong there. If this wolf thinks you do, and the other wolves accept you when you go, then you do belong there. Shivering, he bowed his head, hugging himself. After a moment he reached out, and placed one trembling hand on the wolf's head. Come on, he said softly. Let's go. The moonlight danced over the stone wolf, and the hardness melted into full, dynamic life. It greeted Jess joyfully, licking away his tears, and Jess wrapped his arms around it, burying his face in its fur. The moonlight brightened and shivered again around the pair, and two forms flowed into one. The black wolf shook himself, cocked his head to listen to the howls of the wolves below. He threw back his head and answered the song, and trotted away towards the path down. Gisela followed him, and got as far as the lower hilltop by the time he reached the other wolves. She smiled to herself, watching them welcome him. Something glittering caught her eye, and she turned. Snagged on a short, jutting tree branch was a rope of dark, sparkling stones and silver links, about long enough for a wolf's collar. Too high up for her to reach, though she tried. A narrow-winged falcon dived out of the starry sky, snatched the collar, and despite Gisela's cry of protest, vanished back into the night. Gisela blinked, focused on the glass flower cupped in her hand, heard the braided voices gradually coming apart. She smiled in satisfaction. That could only mean one thing. Jess was going to be okay. Rebecca hadn't done any permanent damage. Except, what had the collar and falcon been? No matter. She'd find out in due time, she was sure. Endless purring. I need to try and rearrange this setup so that he's actually consistently visible. Somehow. Without him losing his lamp. That's going to be the tricky bit. Chapter 14. The two black wolves sniffed warily around the edges of the large yard. The landscaping, just slightly wild, worked in around the ancient trees, had the kind of whole look that usually meant a dryad or an earth-oriented witch had a hand in its care. The trees, whether the gardener knew or not, bore scent traces of a wolf, claiming this as his residence. The house was medium-large, well kept without being overly fancy, though the wooden ramp that doubled back and forth in front of the house made them pause briefly. Andrew could smell wood smoke on the breeze, a warm and homey kind of scent. Overall, this was probably a good place to try. If not here, well, there were lots of other houses in Phalius. They faded back into the woods to where they had left their packs. A few minutes later, human form and dressed, they walked up to the wide front door, and Adri knocked. The woman who opened the door had a distinctly dryad scent, the dark brown in her short curly hair nearly eclipsed by the grey. She overtopped the two wolves by a good 6 inches, and outmasked either by half again, but she greeted them with a friendly, if curious, smile. Yes? We were wondering if you had any odd jobs around that we can do for, say, a meal? Andrew said tentatively. This never got any easier. They dared not spend too much time in the mixed villages, or anywhere for that matter. Hello! How's it going? Terrified that if they did, unity would be repeated all over again. Only in the sense that I consider myself very feline. Terrified that if they did, unity would be repeated all over again. So, in a long circuit, they visited once each, Phalius in Newfoundland, and Endor in Quebec, and Irminsul in Saskatchewan, and Raven Rock in British Columbia, and Araloo that was the newest, up in the Northwest Territories. By unspoken mutual consent, they never went within a very broad circle around unity, and Haven was within that range, much too close for comfort. Close enough to stir memories neither wanted to bring back to the light of day. They passed through Ontario as quickly as they could each time. Never the same house twice, and sometimes they had to knock on more than one door before someone decided to be generous. Floria? A man came into the broad hallway behind her. Who is it? Andri instantly dropped her gaze and went very still, almost before consciously identifying the scent and the casual confidence of an alpha in his own territory. She didn't need to look to know that, half a step behind her, Jason was doing the same. Don't worry about earning it right now, the dryad said briskly. You both look like you've gone about half feral. Come on in, don't worry, Ian won't bite you, not unless he wants me to deal with. Take your boots off there, and we'll see about a hot bath. She backed up to let them in, and closed the door behind them. I'm Floria, he's Ian, and our coven mate Ren is around somewhere. Andrew looked to Ian for confirmation, before moving. Ian simply smiled. There were a lot of laugh lines there, Andrew thought. I learned better than to argue with Flor a long time ago. Consider yourselves welcome. The house has been quiet since the kids moved out, and we have an extra room upstairs where you can sleep if you need it. I'm sure we can find enough around here to keep a couple of strong young bodies busy. Hospitality had always been a tradition in the mixed villages, or so Andrew had been taught, It wasn't universally honored these days, but the ones who did it properly, she thought. Gratefully, she slipped out of her heavy, worn coat and started on the laces of her boots. Jason, waiting for her to decide, immediately followed suit. "I'm Andrei. Jason's my brother." Floria nodded, took the two coats to hang on a set of hooks on the wall, and moved farther into the house to yell, "Ren, we have guests!" "Do they need a healer?" a pleasant baritone called back, from somewhere Andrei thought was on the same floor, but towards the back. "Not immediately, I think." "Then I'll meet them in a few minutes." "He has a rabbit back there that had a passing encounter with a car," Ian explained. "Why he won't just let me eat it, I will never understand." He shrugged and sighed. Healers are usually pretty soft-hearted," Jason said timidly. "And I suppose we'd all be in trouble if they weren't, but that doesn't mean I understand them. So, we only have one full bathroom. Who wants to get warm first?" "Jace," Andrei said, without hesitation. "I can wait." Floria nodded again. "And we'll see if we can't find something clean for you to put on while we throw your clothes in the laundry." Andrei suppressed a twinge of apprehension as Ian led Jason upstairs. Being separated while outside hunting was one thing, but inside, with walls and doors around them, it made her nervous. But there were no sense of treachery or hostility or demon influence here, only kindness and concern. With her backpack slung once again over her shoulder, she followed Floria to a large, bright kitchen at the end of the hall. Around the rather cluttered counters and an island in the center, with a ramp to a raised area on one side, the linoleum floor was obviously kept deliberately clear. Even the 3 chairs at a table to one end were all carefully pushed in all the way. Floria headed immediately for the fridge, and produced a large pan. Once the plastic wrap was off, Andrei caught the wonderful scent of homemade lasagna. "Kids your age need to eat like elves of any age," Floria said. "Supper won't be for a while yet, so I think we'll just microwave a couple of slices of this to keep the 2 of you until then." "Oh, we can't," Andrei began, badly torn between the tantalizing scent and her own pride and honor. Floria turned around to look at her. "Your brother needs it," she said calmly. Andrei recognized the direct appeal to her wolf instincts. She was alpha. It was her responsibility to take care of Jace. But recognizing it didn't lessen the power of it noticeably. She lowered her eyes again. "We both do," she admitted. "What's up, love?" "I won't ask why the 2 of you aren't living with your family somewhere, instead of wandering around with next to nothing. That's your business. It won't cost us any great amount to feed you for a day or 2, and give you a warm place to sleep. And I hope that if my 2 daughters were in any trouble, someone would do the same for them. No more arguing, understand?" Andrei smiled, hesitantly. It felt like an expression she rarely used these days. "Understand." She resolved to find something she and Jace could do to pay them back for the charity, though. There must be something around. Wood to chop, maintenance on a car, house cleaning, something. "Good." Floria fetched 2 plates from the cupboard, deposited a large slice on each, and put one in the microwave on the island. Unexpected sounds of motion behind her made Andrei spin around. She relaxed immediately, as a light-skinned man with a lion's mane of silvery hair joined them in the kitchen. He must have been in a truly terrible accident, Andrei decided, to have been hurt badly enough to need a wheelchair. Healer gifts usually worked extremely efficiently on their own bodies. It certainly explained all the little oddities about the house. "Ren, Andrei," Floria said. "Ian just took her brother Jason upstairs for a bath." "Hi," Andrei said shyly. Wren wheeled the chair all the way into the kitchen and nodded amiably. Be nice to have kids around the house for a day or two. Make yourselves at home. I'm the resident healer. Let me know if you need me. The microwave beeped, and Floria handed Andry the plate and a fork and knife. Table's right there, honey. Go have a seat and eat. I'll get you a glass of milk. And no silliness about not eating until your brother does, she added sternly, as Andry hesitated. I'll make sure he gets some as soon as he gets done. Sit, eat. I'm going to go track down clean clothes. You make sure she does, Wren. Hours later, warm and clean and well fed, Andry and Jason snuggled into the twin beds in the room that had belonged to Floria and Wren's daughters. Night, Jason said drowsily. Andry smiled to herself, suddenly remembering this same day, 18 years before. Remembering slipping quietly into her mother's room once the healer left, and peeking into the old-fashioned wooden cradle next to the bed, to see the two sleeping, rather funny-looking creatures that she had been told were her new little brothers. Remembering her mother's eyes opening, and her warm, if exhausted, smile. It was her earliest memory, long reinforced by her mother's affectionate references to it. Intent on finding them a meal, and maybe a bed, she hadn't thought of it until now. Happy birthday, Jace, she whispered. April 1994, Quicksilver Sphinx. I've been up for what, a little over an hour? Yeah, we can keep going a while longer. And besides, Purry Boy here, I think, is enjoying listening. Somehow they do. Okay. April 1994. Quicksilver Sphinx. Miscellanea. Nick Winter. Well, we all survived winter, I think. Ever notice that everyone in Haven seems to be in higher spirits after the spring equinox? Beltane's coming. Check out the happenings on the back page. Beach bonfire with live music and the usual potluck. That's hard to beat. Drew Windstorm and Maury Rowan are having a baby. It's due in June. How come nobody told me till now? And Haven gets another Aurelian Leorin elf. Camilla Fitzgerald is moving away from us to go to Fallius in Newfoundland. Why is anyone's guess? Don't hit me, Sonia. I'm joking. Fallius is a great place. But I gather it has something to do with a newly forming coven, possibly. I suppose we can stand to lose her for a good cause, and they don't come any better than that. But Exotica won't be the same without her there to play wonderful villains, right from lecherous human princes to angry fairy queens to vengeful ghosts. There's a healers' convention the 23rd and 24th, Saturday and Sunday. Don't ask me about plans, Liam won't tell me. If you're a healer, call Mandisa. She's organizing it. There's a witches' convention coming up too, the 14th and 15th of May, another weekend. If you're a witch, call Dion and he'll tell you what's going on. The database idea is going well, Deanna Sundark tells me, and I'm to thank everyone who for the last 2 months has given them so much information on gems and crystals. They're going to put it on the library computers, and they're working on an effective way to put it on our very own BBS, so anyone who wants to access it can. For anyone who's too young to remember, BBS is a bulletin board system. It was kind of a pre-internet way of having a mutually online accessible, information, message boards, stuff like that. The next subject is herbalism. So all you herbalists out there, sit down and list every kind of herb you use and what you do with them. Obviously, there's more to the art than can be crammed in, but the idea is to get a wide range rather than extreme depth. Again, give it to covens Sundark, Merrymoon, Moonstone, Dragonfire, Tabby Cat, or Harp Song, or to Grant Laundry. In 2 or 3 months, I'll let you know the next topic. We're coming up quickly on that twice-a-year occasion when Brian keeps the library open extra hours for a couple of months for the sake of stressed and busy students. And he has no one lined up yet to help out. If you're interested, stop in and see him. And now, what everyone has been dreading. Historical notes. Bridie Isadora was born April 18th, 1763. Morgan and Victoria were married April 23rd, the day after they met. No, not love at first sight. Victoria was born into a mundane family and accused of being possessed. Morgan recognized her as a healer and married her to get her out of there. He brought her home to Alessandria and Bridie, and a few months later Victoria was part of Starlock. She even left the most awesome sketches of her coven and their friends, and she signed them all, and they were still in the attic of their old house. Okay, Brittany's standing right behind me, so I have to be good. April 11th is the birthday of our other adept, the one whose birthday it wasn't back on October 19th. However, I've been once again forbidden to tell name or age. What is it with our adepts, anyway? If you go to prismcat.com, there should be a link. There should be a link down below on the Twitch page. prismcat.com/blackwolf. Blackwolf is all one. I have no idea. Honestly, I think Streamlabs is being really weird, and I think we're going to have to do something about it. And I'm very sorry about that. It's a little paranoid or something. Anyway, prismcat.com/blackwolf, all one word. And there's a couple of different formats there, a couple of different sources for it. The Wattpad version is the one that is the most up-to-date. I really need to re-upload it to Smashwords and fix the one that's on the website. But they're mostly the same. So I'm very sorry about Streamlabs being as, cranky as it is. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. I am going to keep trying to stream daily and get through the entire thing. We'll see what happens. But that's the plan. If you have any trouble finding it, just give me a yell. Where was I? Okay. Also, I just got walked over by a cat while I was distracted. Black Wolf is all one word, hun. No hyphen in the middle. At least I'm pretty sure there's no hyphen in the middle. There better not be a hyphen in the middle. Try redoing the link without the hyphen, because I don't think that one's going to work. In April 1989, one of our standing mysteries occurred. A recently founded village northwest of here, right from my side. I didn't think there was a hyphen in Black Wolf. I thought I did it all one word. Well, if the direct link doesn't work with or without the hyphen, if you just go to prismcat.com, it's right there. It's not hard to find. There is a hyphen. Oh dear. I could have sworn I did it with no hyphen, and if there is a hyphen, I put the wrong link in a couple of other places. That's not good. Alright, I guess I'm going to have to look into fixing that. Where was I? In April 1989, one of our standing mysteries occurred. A recently founded village northwest of here, called Unity, died, apparently overnight. There have been rumors of survivors, but nothing confirmed. Government investigation was inconclusive. Ours turned up the strong scent of werewolves, but no elves or dryads, bizarre as that is. No one knows anything about who the wolves were, only that they died too. One sad but peculiar detail that comes up in reports is the number of house cats among the dead. Nothing else gave any answers at all, despite all attempts with various divination techniques. At this point, it's unlikely we'll ever know. Enjoy spring and Beltane. That's the end of that article. And yeah, the character list is because there really are a lot of characters in this story. It's a community. Chapter 15. Jesse made his way up the driveway to the door, hoping he was remembering the right house, and knocked. Zara, who was, Jess thought, Deanna's mother, but he might be wrong, opened the door and smiled. "Hello, Jesse. Come on in. I'll call—" She didn't need to. Gisela came racing down the stairs and narrowly avoided hitting Zara. "Hey, Jess, you're back. Took you long enough." He couldn't help grinning. "Well, despite things trying to keep me busy, you're irresistible." "No, I'm not. Just crazy." "I went out to the house, but there's no one there. They moved?" "Mm-hmm. Cynthia's been working on it for months, trying to get a loan on her inheritance from her grandmother to buy it. She died a couple of years ago, but Cynthia's not supposed to get it until she's 21 next year. Nobody said anything because they wanted to surprise you. Wait until you see this place, and it has lots of bedrooms, so you get your own room. Bye, Zara. Let's go, Jess." She really wanted this one because it was built like 200 years ago. It was one of the first in Haven, and it was built by her ancestors and Kev's, and it's made to be perfect for the kinds of magic they do. She kept on, telling him the historical reasons why Coven Sundark deserved it, and the practical reasons why they wanted it. It had been designed to house an entire substantial coven and their children, among others. She refused to describe it, though. Outside the village proper, of course, it seemed like most houses were around here, like everyone valued the private space. The village itself was primarily devoted to stores and schools and library and similar such public places. Gisela stopped in front of a 6-foot grey stone wall, or actually a greenish metal gate in it with a high arch overhead, currently wide open. The archway was wide enough for the van to drive through, and then some. "Here," Gisela pronounced. "You're kidding." "Nope. Go on." How long must that wall be if it surrounded all of this? And how much stone had it taken? Snow covered the ground yet, but he could still see trees in clusters, with clear space around them. Straight ahead, there was another sizable arch, framing a view of the lake. There was another to the left, with trees beyond, but smaller, and the gate was closed. There may have been to the right as well, but the house blocked that. The house belonged perfectly, huge and grey and sprawling irregularly across the landscape. In some places, only 1 story. In some places, 3 or possibly 4. All porches and balconies and windows. "Hey, old dude." "See?" Gisela said in delight. "Come on." "Good God, just how much is this inheritance of hers?" "She won't tell. Not even her coven, I think. But it paid for the van, and now for this, and I don't think it's all gone. Aren't you going to go in? Or just stand here? Wait till me and Cynthia and Dia and Naomi and Nick and Liam get to work on the yard once the snow's all gone." "Come on." "Where's the door?" "Follow the driveway." Past a 2-car garage of similar stone, set apart from the house, up onto a porch the size of the apartment he and Shane shared. Double doors, of course, rich tawny wood, each carved with a crescent moon, horns facing outward, the 2 crescents flanking a 6-armed star. "Just open it," Gisela urged. "I feel like I should be expecting ghosts or something." "No ghosts, we checked." Hey, old dude. This guy is almost 16 years old. And still with us. Hopefully for a long time to come. Yes, let me get my tea out of your way. There you go. No ghosts, we checked. He glanced at her to see if she were serious. She was. The door was heavy, he found, pushing it open. There was a hallway right inside, with hooks for coats. He kept going without stopping, through a more normal-sized door of equally heavy wood, into a larger hall with rooms all around it. The doors, all wood-trimmed glass, French doors he thought they were called, were all closed. "Hey guys," Gisela called. "Where are you?" It echoed eerily. "Upstairs," Kevin called back. "Stay, I'm coming." "Jesus, you could get lost in this place, I bet," Jessie said. "I have a couple of times," Gisela admitted. "It took me a while to find my way out. We'll get used to it." "In 100 years or so." Kevin came around a corner, paint splattered all over him, and grinned. "Hey, Jess. Thought I felt you come in. So, what do you think?" "Can't you guys ever do anything on a normal scale? I mean, a big house, okay, but this is ridiculous." Careful. Careful. There you go. "Does that mean you like it?" "That means I can't believe it." "Oh, it's real. Nobody's lived here for 11 years. It needs too much work to not be real. We started with right here, but the rest is still like something from a ghost story. Except bedrooms and a bathroom and a kitchen. We did those already, too, between everybody. Well, 5 bedrooms. One's yours." Gisela laughed. "Just wait till you see it." Jesse shook his head. "This place is unreal, even more than the rest of Haven." Kevin echoed the laugh. "Help us work on it for 2 days, and you'll never think again that it's not real. It's going to take us months to finish it inside." "Good! At least you didn't just step into a perfect mansion." "It will be. Grand tour?" "Sure." He shed backpack, jacket, and shoes, and followed Kevin. Gisela trailed along behind. He got lost quickly. Everything was old-looking and dingy with disuse. But he thought that the house must once have been beautiful. There was surprisingly little dust. Kevin saved the bedrooms for last. Deanna's was on the ground floor, with an enormous window that had a red maple outside that might be as old as the house. Bain's second-floor room had its own small balcony, Bain's familiar belongings not entirely filling the space. Cynthia's, a short distance away, was bright with windows on 3 sides, beginning 2 feet off the floor and continuing to the ceiling. "And, of course, yours and mine. You weren't here to choose, so we thought about which one you'd like best and set it up just for you." Up to the 3rd floor, a broad hallway that went straight ahead, with a door at the end and a doorway on each side. "Our territory," Kevin said. "As in our own bathroom. Or it will be. Right now I keep thinking something will come to life and try to drag me down the toilet. There's nothing else here but it and 2 rooms. Mine's the right one, yours is left." Jessie touched the handle of Kevin's door. "Can I look?" "Sure, but you might want to see yours first." Jessie hesitated, and decided to take the advice. He opened the other door. Kevin's hand steadied him when Jessie dropped back a step in sheer disbelief. "You're not serious." "Completely. We've had a wonderful time. What you're seeing is the contributions of a lot of people. This Coven and Zella, Coven's Dandelion and Winter, Sam and Katrin, a few furniture donations from friends and family." "Well, go look around," Gisela prompted. The room seemed like it should have been a small dance studio or something. Well, other than the slanted ceiling that reduced the headroom along the far third of the space, broken by 2 windows that each had an honest-to-God, generously large window seat. The walls were painted in a plain, soft, creamy, not quite white, a contrast to the dark, shining wood floor and the dark curtains and the black and glass furniture. At the far end, head to the wall, under another broad window, stood a double bed. 2 small tables flanked it, a lamp on one and a clock radio on the other. On the inner wall, overlooking the bed, were 3 shelves, and on one sat an expensive-looking compact stereo. At the other end, built out from the wall, was a sizable closet of wood that almost matched the floor, and near it a freestanding, full-length mirror. Even the addition of a grey love seat, more or less balancing the bed, failed to make it look crowded instead of comfortable. Everything, the rugs, the blankets on the bed and thrown over the love seat, the curtains, was black or dark purple or grey or silver or combinations of them. Anything not upholstered was black metal and glass and silver, his favorite colors. "Jesus, that's the size of our whole apartment!" And what was in it would have paid the rent on that apartment for at least 2 or 3 months, he was sure. "Like it?" Gisela asked. "Like it? It's even more unreal than the rest. Let me believe it first. I've only been gone for 4 or 5 weeks. How the hell did you manage to do everything you just showed me? And why the hell would you?" He ran out of words. Kevin chuckled. "Because you're special, and we wanted to do something special for you. It's absolutely and totally yours. Everything in there. As for how, a dozen or so people working together, knowing who to ask for what, and with a little magic thrown in, can accomplish a lot." He gave him a gentle push into the room. "This has to have cost a fortune." "Not nearly as much as you think. It's mostly second and third hand. Money wasn't a big consideration anyway." Jess collapsed on the love seat, sinking in deeply, trying to assimilate this. "You don't like it?" Gisela asked, frowning. Kevin laughed again. "I think he's overwhelmed. Maybe nobody's ever given him any good surprises before. Mine is a mirror image, more or less. Tell you what, you stay here and come to grips with the fact that this is really, truly yours, and I'll get back to painting the main second-floor bathroom." "And I'll go get your stuff," Gisela said, darting away. "Why?" Jessie repeated. "It's not an attempt to bribe you into staying, although the thought crossed a mind or 6. Just to do something nice for you. You deserve it. And since you don't have anyone else to do it for you, we did." "That doesn't make sense." "We wouldn't have done it if we didn't want to." The blonde departed, and Jess heard him on the stairs down. Gisela came only long enough to deliver his backpack before she was gone again. Jessie ran a hand over the blanket under him, thoughtfully. There was a lot of the silky stuff in the house, used for everything from clothes to sheets to curtains, like in this room. His room. It still made his skin tingle faintly, less so now than on his first visit to Haven. Not an unpleasant sensation, but a little unsettling. What was it, anyway? More calm now, he explored more closely. Behind the closet doors that folded back like a curtain of dark wood, there were hooks and shelves and drawers and bars and hangers, and clothes. A few things he knew he had left here on his last visit, but others he had never seen. made of that silky stuff in the wild styles he had seen Coven's Sundark and others in Haven wearing, all black, purple, or silver grey. He hesitated, but temptation won. He shed his jeans and t-shirt and tried on a pair of loose black pants made of the silky material. They fit perfectly, unsurprisingly, though a drawstring waist did leave a lot of leeway. He found a grey shirt with loose gathered sleeves and pulled it on. Whisper light and totally seamless, like the pants. And a vest, also black. He gazed at himself in the ornately iron-framed mirror, smiled at his reflection. It made him look abruptly younger, really 17. The slight tingling of the material was a distinctly sensual thrill all over his skin. If he wanted to, while he was here, he could forgo his usual clothes entirely, stay entirely with this new stuff. Could, except he lacked the courage to even leave it on long now. It felt too much like deception, trying to pretend that he belonged here. I could be like them. I could learn, if I stayed here always. Damn it all, even though I've been telling myself over and over not to care, admit it, I care, very much. They're my friends, even if they don't know everything about me. Well, I don't know everything about them either, that's fair. He liked the Jessie looking back. That was the Jessie that should have been. He laid the fingertips of one hand against the glass, wishing with all he was that he could step through and trade places. Am I in your way, love? Honestly. The cats are not very impressed because usually they sit where I currently am. Come on. Which direction were you going? Okay. Hey, mirror, he whispered. Do you grant wishes? Can you make me like that Jessie instead of me? The other Jessie just gazed back, but his dark eyes, grey-blue-green with a blue starburst around the pupil, looked very sad and lonely, and much older than the face they were in. Jessie shook himself. What am I doing, talking to a mirror? I'm losing it. The insanity around here is getting to me. He spent another moment just gazing at his reflection. As oddly natural as it looked, he sighed, switched back to jeans and t-shirt. It simply wasn't him. End of chapter 15. I will probably do one more chapter and then call it a day, since I do have some stuff that I really have to get done. Social distancing and stuff doesn't mean that I don't still have responsibilities and things that have to actually get done. So, one more chapter. Chapter 16. Kevin raised his head from his math homework, knowing it was Jessie hesitating in the doorway, even before he looked. What's up? Can I ask you something without you getting mad at me? If it's that touchy, I won't promise to give you an answer, but I can promise not to get mad about you asking it. He sat up, an invitation for Jessie to come join him on his big brass bed. His desk rarely got used for homework. Sprawling on his bed was both more comfortable and easier than trying to clear enough space. Jessie stepped around the not-yet-unpacked boxes and perched on the edge of the bed, running a hand over the silky blankets. It's about this stuff. It's not natural, is it? Kevin winced inside, old fears rousing. He ignored them resolutely. That depends on what you mean by natural. he said, choosing his words carefully. But if you mean, did we buy it somewhere that made it by conventional industrial means, then no, it isn't. Then what is it? Most people call it mage silk, because only a mage can make it, and the parallel has been drawn before of a spider spinning silk. Besides, it generally turns out feeling a lot like silk. You made all this. Laurie and I did, yes. In a sense, it's more natural than anything you could buy, woven out of sunlight or moonlight, purely with a mage's gifts. Out of light? But light's not... He stopped short. Kevin smiled, despite the effort to keep his voice steady and his body relaxed. Light's not supposed to make gates that cover 40 minutes walk in a few steps, either. That's what a mage works with, light and fire. Witches like Cynthia and Naomi and Nick, they can do a little with all the elements. Mages can do a lot more, but only with our element. He got up and moved to one window seat. There was plenty of electric light in the room, of course, but sunlight and moonlight were always easiest to work with. The moon's bright enough. Come here. Jessie came. Absently, Kevin glanced at the lamp by the bed and turned it off, then flipped the switch near the door that controlled the overhead, so the only light was that of the waning moon and stars. Not enough to allow him to see, but he didn't really need to be able to. It was one of the first skills he had mastered under Thomas, how to catch the light in his hands so it pooled like water, then use hands and will to weave the delicate strands of pale moonlight into a piece of whisper light mage silk, a foot square. Jessie's fascination tickled against the edges of his mind. Kevin offered it to him. See? That's too flimsy to last long. I didn't put much effort into it. Or I can make it dark. He ran a finger over the silk in Jessie's hands, turned it black. I could change the shape, or make it heavier, or make the color anything I choose. Because it's my will influencing the light. And when it's not needed anymore... He passed a hand lightly over the cloth, and it melted back into moonlight. It only comes from a mage. As far as I know, yes. Why? He glanced in the direction of the lamp, and it switched itself back on, followed promptly by the overhead light. Poor night vision was just part of life for an elf, but he wanted to be able to actually see Jessie's reactions. Missing subtle body language, important in anyone, but especially in a werewolf, could have big, bad consequences. Jessie shrugged. Nothing. It's just, I'm sure I've seen Shane sell scarves and stuff that feel the same when we're really low on cash. I've asked him a couple of times where they came from, but he won't give me a straight answer. Shane's no mage, Kevin said. A mage living in the city is more likely than a healer or a witch, but Shane isn't one. Jessie blinked. And you know this how? Oops. Well, I gated to the city to chase off something nasty that could sense you had been in Haven and was attracted to that? Uh-huh. And this happened when? Way back in November. Back in... that freaky night I had when I just couldn't lose that woman chasing me and my hand got messed up? Mm-hmm. Flynn had a hunch, got a focus, and I gated. He hated leaving out the part of the wolves in it, but that would lead to longer explanations he wasn't quite comfortable getting into. At the time, I didn't think hanging around to say hi was a good idea. Probably just as well. I was less used to weirdness. Thank you forever. I was getting really scared. That was what it intended. I did get a look at Shane, and he shows as perfectly ordinary to mage sight, no trace of any gifts. Jess, we didn't think you'd mind the mage silk. Lori and I make things for friends all the time. That's one of my favorite parts of being a mage. If I had thought you'd mind... Jesse shook his head, slowly. That's not it. I'm just trying to figure things out. You're always welcome to ask. I don't think I know the right questions. Not about everything, true. Some things it's better to find out in your own time. Would you tell me if I asked you to? I don't know. I'll tell you anything you want about mages, but most other things I'd be more likely to send you to one of the others to ask. Like Cynthia for witches or Flynn for seeing. Just like they would send you to me if you asked about mage stuff. That makes sense. Why do mages only work with light? What about the other 3 elements? Is there something like mages for them too? Jesse had been picking up magic theory, There is for earth, healers like Gisela. Wind and water, none that we know of. As for why we're limited to fire... He hesitated. Should he tell? Even if he told of only 1 of 3? Or should he let it slide? Mages aren't human exactly. Jesse gave him a wary look, but didn't react in any of the myriad panicky ways he could have. Not human. Someday I'll learn to keep my mouth shut. It felt like walking a knife edge, one where he didn't know what lay on either side. Human is a rather tricky word to define, but we aren't quite. Or maybe it would be better to think of us as a human subspecies. Although most of the stories about us are highly exaggerated. Pure nonsense. The name we use currently is elves. Any elf can do a few things. There aren't many mages, although it does tend to run in my dad's family. Elves have a natural affinity for fire and light, although a few other things like telekinesis and telepathy tend to go with it to varying degrees. And a high metabolism, that's why I eat so much. Mages are even worse than other elves for that. Excuse me. Elves also have no night sight to speak of, but we can see heat patterns. Infrared, basically. And mages have something called mage sight that lets us see anything that's living or magical. Elves. Well, like I said, the stories are warped. Seriously. Elves are always blonde and usually average height or above, and there's no such thing as an overweight elf. Unhealthily skinny elves, yes. We don't tan at all because we just don't interact with light that way, which usually means very light-skinned, but there are exceptions. You going to try to tell me you didn't even notice how Lori and I and most of the other tall blondes you might have seen in Haven look? That includes a handful who are the kids and grandkids of an elf and a black telekinetic. Skin color's different, but they've got all the other basic elven traits. They don't tan or burn either. It took all his self-control to be still and wait for Jesse's reaction. He was so deathly afraid of being mistrusted and feared. He'd had enough of that for a lifetime, even if he had brought it on himself. And if Jesse stopped trusting him, that he couldn't do anything about except hope. Jesse sighed, expression one of resignation. I should have expected something weird like this after what I've seen. I've definitely been hanging around here too long. The urge to do something drastic and hysterical isn't even very strong. Something inside released. Truth rang below the words, and Kevin could pick up nothing on the surface, suggesting deception. Jesse really saw nothing to fear. Kevin had to fight a sudden urge to hug him. That's good. My coven would be less than impressed with me if you did that. Weren't supposed to tell? Not exactly. It's a risk on our part. Most of what keeps Haven safe is that we make sure we aren't noticed. Jessie snorted derisively. Not much risk. Who'd believe me? I'm not exactly a reliable source. Elves and witches and healers. Yeah, right, like anyone would listen to me. So, are healers exactly human, or is there something for Earth? We call them dryads. The stories about them are just as messed up. However, if you want to know more about dryads, you can go find Deanna or Gisela and ask. He just hoped neither would be mad that he had told. Although given Gisela's oft-repeated opinion that they should just tell Jess all about Haven, she at least would probably be delighted. Dryads are a bit harder to spot, but think in terms of shades of brown, usually darker rather than lighter, and about 2/3 of them are female. There are human healers, though. They just work differently to similar ends. And not all dryads are healers, just like not all elves are mages. And like I said, water and air, there's nothing we know of. Witches are human and work with all 4 elements, although they usually have tendencies towards one. Elves and dryads can both interbreed with humans, but not with each other, which is part of why no one has figured out precise definitions yet. Elves and dryads and witches, Lord, what a place. Anyway, you have homework to do. Thank you for the honest answer. I'm going to go rethink my view of the world. Again. Alright, we didn't know what to get by way of music. You're welcome to borrow anything of mine you want. What? Flynn's cards couldn't tell him. Maybe later. Good luck with the homework. I need it. Jess departed, but he left Kevin feeling like a hypocrite. Lying by omission, not telling him about wolves, was still lying. The 3 covens and their friends had discussed it, and decided Jessie deserved answers when he started really asking questions, but disagreement remained about how far to go and what to let him discover himself. It will be so nice when all this is over, he thought wistfully. When Jess knows what he is, and there are no more secrets. I really don't like secrets. Maybe soon. Okay, we're going to pause there for the day, because I have to go do stuff. I am going to double check what the heck is going on with that link to Black Wolf. I could have sworn there was no hyphen in it, but okay. On the website it does have a hyphen. I'm going to see if I can fix things so that it will go to the same place with or without, because there are several places I have dropped the link without the hyphen. Anyway, prismcat.com in order to find actual text copies of this novel and several others. If you've been hanging around and following along with this, then awesome. I'm glad you've been with me. And lurking is perfectly fine. I frequently lurk in a lot of places. Just, it's nice to be around and not necessarily feel pressured to say anything. So, from me and my awesome mod Indie Diva and my trio of feline associates here, everybody have a great day. Stay inside as much as you possibly can. Stay clean, stay safe, and look after yourselves. We're all going to get through, and it should be an interesting new world on the other side. Okay, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at more or less the same time. Okay, have a great day.